Welcome to the Empress Effect, where we are strengthened by virtue, guided by faith, and raised by grace. Get ready for wisdom, inspiration, and transformation. Now here's your host, Sheree Hallbrick.
Welcome to another episode of the Empress Effect. I am your host, Sheree Hallbrick, and I am so very excited about today's topic. Today, we will be discussing balancing both business and personal relationships. It's so important to know and keep all of these things in line as you reach your vision and your goals. We talked about it last month of setting your goals and making sure that they were faith-driven. Well, today we are going to include our faith in everything that we do while we talk to our guest, Stephanie Torres. She is one of the founders of the Contigo Real Estate group in Lancaster. Her and her husband work hand in hand and know full well what it means to balance business and relationships. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your husband, your son, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor that you even thought of me. Like, it really means a lot. So my husband Ozzy and I, we started Contigo Real Estate just over a year ago. And before that, we've been business partners and working together for the last 6-7 years in real estate. But we've been married for 12 years and we have a beautiful 8-year-old son, Gavin, and he's just our world. And so we pretty much, have just kind of always gone into things, big dreams, and work hard and see what happens.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Today's episode is, like I said, all about balancing business and personal relationships. We want to talk about setting boundaries, effective communication, and of course, integrating our faith into our everyday life. We are trying to get to the very core of this issue because this is something that resonates with most women, specifically women entrepreneurs and women professionals. We often feel a sense of guilt and conflicting emotions when we are moving into this space. Is this something that you had felt or have dealt with as you've gone through in the last couple of years?
Oh, 100%. 100%. So, this whole topic definitely rings true with me. I think that this is something that I'm always trying to work through, and I'm excited to dive in here. I would say, so guilt being a mom particularly, but whether you're mom, wife, friend, whatever, I think that it's really hard to create those boundaries. I would say that, particularly like when I first started getting to real estate and Gavin was a baby, that first kind of choosing to leave him and kind of do that handoff with family, even though it was family who was taking care of him, and be like, okay, I need to go do this, and I need to go work. That's a hard transition. And I think that there's a lot of moms who deal with guilt in that transition. And I think the thing for me, it always gets me teary-eyed every time I think about it, is I was handing my baby boy into my mother-in-law's arms and I just started crying. And I knew I was going to cry on this, but it was coming sooner than I thought. But she just put her arms around me and she was like, it's okay. Like, you're doing the right thing. He's going to thank you one day for this. And that just got me, and it's like, I think I've kind of come back to that moment time and time again over the years.
Sure. And
just thought, okay, there has to be a reason why you are doing whatever it is that you're doing. Whether you're an entrepreneur, you're, in business and in ministry leadership, whatever it is that you're spending time doing. When it comes down to it, you really have to know your why.
Sure.
I think that's really been huge for me, is figuring out, okay, it can be a big why. It can be, hey, these are the dreams I have and the future that I have in mind for my family, for my son, for whatever it is that is your priority. But it can also be fun wise, Sure. It can be something like, hey, like if I hit this goal, we can go to whatever trip that we want to do. Or, it can be kind of those short-term whys as well, which is interesting. I have not heard your other episode yet, but he said he did goals. I love some good goals. So, I would say just having that, that you can really lean on.
Yes.
I think is really, really important. And I think can really ground you and kind of help let go of that guilt.
I full-heartedly agree with everything you just said. And one of the things we talked about last episode was figuring out what it is and why you're doing what it is you're doing. Okay. You know, what your purpose is, and does it align with what God's purpose is for you? Yeah. Because sometimes we have aspirations, and if we really look at it, it's not where God has directed us in the kingdom. Right. So we have to, you know, take a step back and say, what really is my why? But I'm so excited because in this episode, that's exactly what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about all of those things, all of the misconceptions, all of the practices that we both do, and hopefully our viewers will get some really good insight out of this. So just stay with us, and we're going to dive right into this episode. All right, Empresses, we are going to get right into the meat of this, because I know just last week I was dealing with my own conflicting emotions and guilt. See, this is something that creeps in when we find ourselves pulled in multiple directions. And as mothers, as wives, as businesswomen, entrepreneurs, or professionals, we're already pulled into 15 million different directions, right? So that's what we're talking about today, and what it means to wrestle with those conflicts. I started to do some research on my own because, again, we're integrating our faith into this thing. So nothing's new under the sun. So that means God has already said something about what it is that we're going through. And it took me to Paul in Romans. And Paul specifically, and more times than not, kept saying, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I always do the opposite. I'm always struggling within myself. And then in Romans 7:25, he said, what a horrible person I am. Who can save me from the body of my own? Like, that's Paul. That's us. That's us every day, you know? So we are going through these things. We're talking about it, and nobody is giving real practical points. We've got to figure it out for ourselves. I don't know if you knew, but 1 in 5 women in the United States experience a mental health crisis. Wow. Dealing with the multiple directions that we pull ourselves in. I don't know about you, but I'll just say for me, last week, I was having it. I have 5 kids. I've got my mom in St. Thomas. My husband and my dad are here. I've got all of these things pulling me in directions. And I literally had to say, God, what am I doing? What do I need to let go of? What do I have to offload? Has there been anything like that in your life recently?
Oh, 100%.
Really? See, I knew it wasn't just me.
We were literally sitting on the couch for like 3 hours last night, and we do not stay up late anymore. We just can't do that. And we were literally sitting there like reevaluating, like, okay, how do we need to restructure? And you have to do that. You know, you have to have those moments where you just kind of like, all right, where do we need to shift right now? Because you can't do it all. You can't do it all. No.
I just said to my daughter, you know, I'm thinking about how do I pivot? Which way do I go? What direction? We're constantly going through these difficult conflicts. And what happens a lot of times is, instead of people revisiting their goals and seeing where maybe they've strayed off the path, they get overwhelmed and then they give up. Right. We don't want you to give up. We don't want you to stop doing what it is that God has called you to do. We want you to keep going, right? We want you to succeed. God wants you to succeed. He wants to see you progress the kingdom. So in order to do that, how do we do that? What do you do when life gets so overwhelming? How do you bring yourself back?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, I think that you really touched on a key word there, is pivot. I think being willing to take those moments where you need to reflect. You know, sometimes we get to those points where we're so overwhelmed that we need to kind of like slow down for a minute. And I know sometimes it can feel impossible, but even if it's a minute, you know, just to kind of like clear your head a little bit and get yourself to a place where you can have a moment of rest. And that's kind of what I find that I need to do. And then kind of reevaluate and see and pray and be like, God, like, something doesn't feel right. You know, there's something needs to change, and really just kind of asking for that direction of like, okay, am I still going in the right direction, or do I need to edit something out of my schedule or edit something about my priorities or ask for help? Like, it's okay to change. Like, you don't have to keep doing things in that same way.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So now there's some misconceptions about work-life balance. That's a popular buzzword all over social media right now, is work-life balance. You've got people who are quiet quitting their positions because they feel like they are working harder than they're actually appreciated for. And unfortunately, as a wife and a mother, we can't just quiet quit. We can't just not do what it is we're supposed to do every day. So the misconceptions of work-life balance, people start to think that maybe you are spending the same amount of time on your life and on your job. Do you think that's true? Or do you think is that something that you can?
I don't know if you can measure that. Like, where did the lines kind of blur a little bit? I don't know. I think that, I'm trying to think through that. So I would say, as far as like where you're spending your time, if you have a way that you can overlap and kind of be able to create some of that balance, it can help. Now, of course, some of us as an entrepreneur, you have a little bit more of that flexibility to be able to do that. Like, I can have Gavin come into the office or something like that, and it kind of helps me feel like I'm dipping into both. But no, I think being patient with yourself and just being real and recognizing that no one really has it all figured out. Right. I think that's a big misconception, is that, there's kind of, especially now that you have Instagram and all of these things that, make it look like, okay, here's the, what do they call it? That girl routine, or here's my work bag and I have a little spot for everything. It's like, we don't all have that figured out. That's not what it is, really. And I think, you can look and see, woman after woman who looks like they, can balance it all. They've got the perfect schedule. They've got the perfect, life balance figured out. They are killing it at their job. But when it comes down to it, they don't know what they're doing either.
Right.
And I think just realizing that, like, and kind of like, debunking that myth, I think, is so key. And just to be like, hey, we're all figuring it out.
That's the biggest one, honestly, because you look, and like you said, Instagram and social media, whatever, everybody looks like they've got it all together.
Right.
Like, how are they not stressing out right now? Like, I know for myself, I get up in the morning and I go through my daily routine, and there are some days where I'm like, how am I going to possibly accomplish all of this stuff?
100%. Yeah.
And then once I start going through my list, I don't even want to give myself credit for the things that I've accomplished. All I can see are the things that I didn't finish. Right. And then I'm like, I don't know why I could have ever thought that I could have done all of these things. But then I talk to some of the women that are watching me do things, and they're like, Sheree, you did this and you do this and this. Stop beating yourself up. You're doing as much as you possibly can. There is no way we were meant in life to handle as many things as we put on ourselves. And it's honestly just because we're not leaning on the right arms. We try to pull it into our own selves. We try to do it on our own strength. And we really need to stop and take a minute and say, you know what, God, does this really line up with what we discussed at the beginning of this year? Or is this something extra that I'm putting on myself? I know that's one of my biggest hiccups in life, is I am such a driven person that I forget to take the time and say, God, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this who I'm supposed to be doing this with? And is there someone else that could help me through it? As women, sometimes we feel like we have to do everything. When we don't have to do it. We're not alone. We've got our Empress exchange group. We've got our women that can talk to us and support us and be with us. We've been taught that female relationships are toxic and detrimental, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It was never meant to be that way. And while we're talking about it, I have a question for you. Our first episode, we introduced the Empress exchange groups, and I am handpicking my Empress exchange group.
Awesome.
I've been praying about it, and I would like to ask you to join my group. We haven't decided on our dates yet. We've got to get everybody in. And once I have everybody listed, I'll send out a whole invitation. Like, it'll be a whole big thing.
Yeah, I love it. That sounds amazing. Honestly, I was driving here because I had looked that up, and I was driving here and I was thinking, like, so I wonder how she's picking her exchange group. Like, I wonder if I would get to be in. Like, can I ask that?
You can, absolutely. I'm so excited. You guys don't know it, but Steph came into my life because of my son, Justin. He got his realtor's license in like record time last summer.
He's a rock star.
And he said, Mom, you're going to love these people. I want you to meet Steph. She had a book club. Her and her husband had written a book, and we will attach that book to the link on our YouTube. But they had written this book, and it just enriched my life. I'm going through, and it's a workbook, and I love a good workbook. Like, it just was amazing. And you have been so vital to me in the last couple of months that I am so appreciative of you. Thank you. I am so excited when our exchange group meets. It is going to be a complete,
it's going to be on fire.
Amazing time. Amazing time.
That's exciting.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk about today was prioritizing self-care. I don't know about you, but if I don't take care of me, I'm no good to anybody.
Right.
I don't have a specific routine. I'm watching your TikTok videos though. I see you exercising and trying to get yourself together. And I'm like, you know what, if she could do it, maybe that's what I need to think of. So it was one of my questions for you. What is your self-care routine?
Oh, mine. Okay. All right. So rest. Rest matters first.
Okay.
And I've been learning this. I'm serious. Like, honestly, I think I could talk about this forever, but like, I think I've definitely struggled with a lot of, self-image things and pressures and different things like that I would always think like self-care, like exercise needs to come first. And I've gotten to a point as I'm going through this process that of strengthening myself and trying to figure out what that routine needs to look like for me. That yes, exercise and pushing yourself, in that is important. But if you don't know how to rest first, and if you can't let yourself just be refilled first, then that you're just going to burn yourself into the ground, especially when you're as busy as we are. So I think honestly, and part of this is coming with aging too, learning when you need to go to sleep and what your evening routine needs to look like is like number one. Yes, it can feel like, hey, you're busy because you have a long work day, and then you come home and you spend time with your kids, and then there's dinner, and then there's cleaning, and then at the end of the day, you're like, I just want to chill in front of the TV for a while. But like when you actually feel like, and take a moment to slow down and like notice how that makes you feel, then you just realize that like you're tired, you feel cranky because you should have been upstairs a couple hours ago,
right.
And so like Ozzy and I have been realizing like, honestly, like once we put Gavin to bed, and he goes to bed early, sometimes it's like, I think we just need to like chill now. Like, I think it's time to like just go to sleep, like get that. I mean, I'm not going to lie, like 10 hours has been the ideal amount of sleep recently that you need, but at least for me. But like once you have that, then you're well charged to be able to then push yourself in other ways. Like if you want to exercise, if you want to walk or things like that. So that's kind of the soapbox I've been on recently. But then also finding like, okay, like what other types of rest are important? Like, is it walking and talking things out with your spouse, or, kind of taking time to slow down and snuggle with your kid, whatever that is. Like there's so many different ways that you can rest, but if you can prioritize that to recharge, spending time with the Lord in prayer, reading your Bible, kind of like having that time to really listen and see what he wants to feed into you, goes such a long way. It
really does. It really does. What do you do to set boundaries between work and family? Do you have a cutoff time? I found myself today saying to Charlie that I think I need to stop working on everything, whether it's She's So Clean stuff, Empress Effect stuff, any of the other organizations that I'm a part of. I need to shut stuff off by 6 o'clock, because if I don't, I'll work all night long because I love to be on the computer. So I don't feel like I'm working, but I'm honestly constantly working. So what type of boundaries have you set? Or have you not?
That's hard, because with Ozzy and I being business partners and being in real estate, that's something that really doesn't stop. So there are times when we're in the car, we're at home or whatever, like, hey, I had this update on this or that. And like we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other.
Sure.
So I can't say that we have a cutoff. And we have talked about that in the past and just decided that's just not for us. But it's more a matter of like introspection. Like we have to feel for ourselves. Like if there's a time when I feel like, hey, I need you to try to stop working if you can. Like I need your attention right now. Like I'm just feeling that, like communicating that is huge. And then if there's something vice versa where I'm just like, look, I need to take a break from this. Like I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to rest. I need to kind of put this on pause. That communication, and I think just self-awareness of like being able to recognize when you're feeling overwhelmed, I think that's huge. It's not practical for us to set a set off time or a cutoff time. But yeah, just being able to kind of communicate those moments where you can be like, hey, I need a break.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the communication piece is the biggest part, especially for a couple who works together. We live together. We're always together. Charlie and I are the same way. And I find sometimes he'll ask stuff about, it's our village, and it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night because we're coming home from a basketball game. Shout out to Red Knights. We have a game tonight between us and Muhlenberg. So we'll be sitting there again tonight. But if we're always on. So there are days where we both have to say, okay, today is the day that we talk. No, it's our village stuff. It's just me and you. We're not bouncing any ideas. We're just resting and being together. I think that's important. I really do think that's very important for us to know and to do. How do you delegate? I mean, you guys have a lot of new realtors in your group. So you're training a lot of folks. How do you delegate these things?
I am not going to pretend to be the expert at that. I'm just going to say it right here. Here is me being real and being like, look, I don't have that figured out.
I was hoping that you would give me some tips because I haven't figured it out either.
So, no, and we have interns and we have new agents that we're training. And part of that is to kind of take some of that pressure of certain tasks that we can hand off. Again, this morning, Ozzy and I were sitting down talking through, okay, like this is how we're going to restructure our schedule for, this season. And we're like, well, what do we do about these types of tasks? And he's like, well, I think you need to hand those off a little bit. And that's what they're here for. And, and the thing, I think he said something to me that really, really helped. He said, if you think about the fact that you giving that person that responsibility makes them feel empowered. And he was like, I gave this task to one of the interns, and her face just lit up. And this was the most excited she's been about what she's been learning, since she started. And I think realizing that you're not kind of putting pressure on them, you're helping to empower that person by saying, you know what, I do this normally, but I want you to do it. So,
wow, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, the whole point is to empower others, right? So if we can hand off some of those tasks that we do all the time, they tend to get monotonous, and we're, I don't want to check these emails. I don't want to respond. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You don't want it to be something necessarily that's grudgingly, but something that you've now lost passion for, that you can say, you know what, let me train you to do this and see if it's something that you're good at. I know we've tried to do it within, our multiple ventures. It doesn't always work. People don't always rise to the occasion, but we do at least try. And hopefully we are empowering them along the way. So that's great. I'm not an expert at delegating at all. I would like to do better, but I don't do well. We are all learning. It is all a process, and God is not done with us yet. So we're going to take a break, get some water and refresh ourselves, and we'll be right back. All All right, everybody. Thank you so much for that little break. We needed to rest ourselves and refresh ourselves. I don't know if you can see, but we are both drinking from our Empress Effect mugs. Steph has a black and gold, and I have the white and gold, and they are available on our website. So pick one up and drink with us for the next episode, right?
Absolutely.
So we're going to get right back into this because this discussion has been so great. But I wanted to go back a little bit. We had mentioned in the very beginning that both of us kind of deal with a little bit of self-doubt sometimes. Not necessarily that we don't know that we're capable. We know we're capable women, right? But sometimes we feel like maybe we're not worthy for all of the things that God has put on us and the things that he's requesting of us, right? We see the things and the people that we are mentoring or teaching or encouraging, and I look at my own life sometimes and I go, who am I? Like, why do I think I could be the one that somebody's going to listen to? I don't know. Is that something that you've ever?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like sometimes as women, we just don't give ourselves enough credit.
Right.
We just don't give ourselves enough credit. Is there a way that you can help our audience combat it? What do you do? What happens? What triggers you into those thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like that. That really rings true with me for sure. And that's always something that I would say is on my mind. It was funny because even when you reached out to me and said like, hey, do you want to share about this? You explained what Empress Effect was. And I was like, wait, me? I kind of had to read it twice. I was like, I think before I knew that it was a women's podcast, I was like, doesn't she mean Ozzy? Like, he's the one who's like wise and can talk about this stuff. I'm like, you want to hear from me? And so it's interesting. I think that no matter like where you are in your business, or just in your life, I think imposter syndrome is real. Like it really is. And I was just sitting down with another young 30s broker the other day, and she was sharing the same thing. And I was like, wait, you deal with that, And she said something like, even those that are, they've been doing this for 30 years, they're the executives, they look like they have it all together. Like they're just kind of figuring it out as they go too and kind of making it up. And, right. And I think we just have to kind of, it'd be nice if we can kind of tear down those barriers and just realize that we are all just kind of figuring it out as we go. And I would say, for me, I always I try to really lean back on, it's actually 1 Timothy 4:12, where it says, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example. And that has always kind of stood out to me even since I was a kid, because I've always dreamed big. I've always kind of like wanted to be 5 steps ahead,
Sure.
And when Ozzy and I decided to open Contigo Real Estate, we were, I was 31, he was 29. And I was like, okay, what is this entire real estate community going to think of us? Mm-hmm. Like, who am I to think that I could be a broker at 31, and who's going to listen to me, and everyone's going to be laughing and all this stuff. And Ozzy kept saying, he's so wise, I'm telling you. He kept saying, he's like, honestly, no one's really going to care. If anything, they might look at you and be like, wow, that's cool. Because you have to think, like, when you are looking at, let's say, social media, or you're seeing an announcement that someone else has done, if they've accomplished something, more times than not, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Like, how often I don't know what everyone's opinion is, but I can't say like I'm like scrolling, I'm like, oh, they accomplished something. You know what I mean?
Right,
like, you have to think. Like, I don't think that people are thinking of as negatively about ourselves
as we think they're thinking. Right.
Exactly. And so I think just being able to be strong in that purpose and going back to your why and the purpose that God has set for you in the position that you're in, like that's not a mistake. Like he put you there on purpose. So whenever you're feeling that self-doubt or like that, question of like, am I even supposed to be doing this? Like you have to go back to those moments when he put you there and be like, okay, like, there's a reason, just keep moving forward. Sure. And that's all we can do.
I feel like, when I am counseling someone else who's going through those self-doubt things, I always say that the enemy is going to tell you the opposite of what it is that God really thinks.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
So if in your mind you're thinking, I can't do this, it's the enemy telling you you can't do it. It's not God telling you that, because God's not the author of confusion. Mm-hmm. So he's not going to put you in a place that he doesn't think that you're capable of achieving what it is that you are in place for. So I always give that advice. I don't always take that advice.
Yeah.
But again, it's the same. You've got to take a breath. You've got to take some rest, and you've got to refocus, and you've got to put your mind and your thoughts back on who put you in this position. Is this something that the world's given you, or is this something that God has given you?
Right.
And when we start to think about it like that, we are just ambassadors for what it is that God wants to do. We're not imposters, we're ambassadors. It's not me doing it, it's God doing it. And as easy as I can counsel that, I understand the reverse of it. I understand saying, you know what, God, maybe I run too fast? Did I go without you? So that's when you take those goals and you reevaluate them and see if they line up. Do they line up with what it is that God has called you for? Because if they line up, then it was absolutely God that put you where you're at.
Right.
Every one of us deal with it. Every one of us. Am I going to be a good mom? Am I going to be a good wife? Am I going to be a good whatever it is? We spend so much time worried about what other people are going to think. And like you said, most of the time, they really don't care. They're not looking at your life going, I hope her business fails. Like, who does? And if they do, get them away from you. Those are not the
We don't
people.
want to care what they think.
We don't need you or any of that negativity in our life. You know, it is a true statement that we wrestle not with flesh and blood, because it's not person against person. You know, we had said earlier about we've all been taught that female relationships are toxic, you know, that women will tear you down, but it's not true. We only have been taught that and have been working in that direction because that's what we've heard all these years. When are we going to embrace each other and actually hear what the word says? We're supposed to be edifying one another. So if you ever feel like you're not worth it, text me and say, Sheree, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm going to text you back and I'm going to say, I rebuke it right now in the name of Jesus, because you are everything that God has put on you. You are a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother. I've watched you host people in your house and bring them in. It is the most cozy and welcoming place that you can come in. You can sit comfortably on the couch. Gavin has the most beautiful smile on his face. My son has been so blessed by Contigo. He talks about you guys every day, and he's in school yet. Like he's not even doing it. Like he is trying to emulate everything that you and Ozzy have done. And all that tells me is that you are exactly where God wants you to be.
Wow.
And that means you're right where he wants you to be in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. So if ever you feel like it, I got you. Don't worry.
I appreciate that.
You are
Thank you.
everything you were meant to be. Everything.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that.
Yes,
definitely.
please do.
Because I can take more of that. Like, just keep going.
I feel like we all could. We all need somebody that's willing to speak back into our life, right? So
that means a lot. Yeah.
That's what I want this podcast to do ultimately. The exchange groups to do ultimately is to give everyone that is seeking that camaraderie, that validation, that support, that they know that they have it in this community. Yeah. So I'm so grateful that you were the very first to be here with us today. I am so excited for what God is going to do in this setting and in everything else that you have put your hands on. Ozzy is a lucky man. And I know he knows it. He has been given the ultimate helpmeet, and you will be ultimately blessed for that. Ultimately blessed for that. Oh, well, that is everything. We've gone through all of the misconceptions. We've gone through self-care, and we've talked about balancing the relationships. Ladies, this is the way to do it. This is how you have balanced and healthy relationships. Have conversations. And in your exchange groups, you're exchanging ideas. Why does one thing work and another doesn't? Sit down with women who have that same vision, same like mind, same faith, so that you can have discussions that are going to enrich your life from now until the end of time. Before we get out of here, all I want to say is that we love you. We do this because we love you. Our ministries, our business, the kingdom movement is simply so that the women of this world are ready for what God wants from them. We need to rise up. We were the first. We saw him outside of the tomb first. It is our responsibility to push this word, to push this movement, to push his love into the world. And this is how we're doing it. I just want to say thank you, Stephanie, for accepting the invitation. We were so excited. We were talking about it and everything, but I really just want you to know that I appreciate you being here on the show. Do you have any last words to say to everyone?
Thank you so much for having me. And it was really such an honor. So excited to be able to chat with you and with the women who are listening. And you're doing an incredible job. Thank you for starting off Empress Effect. I'm so excited to get to learn more from you. So thank you for having me. It's been such an honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will have all of her contact information in the links attached to the podcast, wherever you're listening or watching us today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send them her way. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for joining us on the Empress Effect. Today, you have been strengthened by virtue, guided by faith, and raised by grace. If you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for the latest updates. You can also follow all of our social media platforms to stay connected. And for exclusive Empress Effect merchandise, visit our website at theempresseffect.org. Stay encouraged on this journey, and remember, you were born for such a time as this.